Today we're going to look at the word rather in English. Now it's a really useful word, but it has many different meanings and it can be a bit tricky, so do pay attention. But by the end of this video you'll know it perfectly. So we're going to look at would rather that we use to talk about preferences. Rather as an adverb of degree, a bit like quite or pretty or fairly, if you know those words. And here it can be used before adjectives, verbs and nouns. And also rather than to mean instead of or in place of. And we're going to have a look at that first. So let me give you some examples of that. Can we meet on Sunday rather than Saturday? Can we meet on Sunday rather than Saturday? This work is now done by computers rather than humans. Rather than criticizing me, why don't you help me? And today I'm in a bit of a hurry because I'm going to London right now. And so I thought, rather than giving the standard lesson from my comfortable chair, I thought it'd be interesting to do the rest of this lesson during my journey to London. I'm not sure quite how it's going to turn out, but it should be fun. Anyway, let's try. So I'm taking the Eurostar right now. Let's go. So I left my home now and now I'm heading over to the metro. So would rather for preference. The construction is would rather plus infinitive without to. I would rather, you would rather, he would rather, etc. So here I am at the metro station, and with would rather, of course, you can contract would. So I would, I'd, you would, you'd, he would, he'd rather. Okay, so that would be the most common way to do that. So let's have a look at one example. Now I'm taking the metro today. I'd rather walk than take the metro. I'd rather walk than take the metro, but I don't have much time, so I'm taking the metro. And you might also ask, what's the difference between would rather and prefer? I'll explain that in a moment. Well, questions use would you rather. Would you rather live in the city or the countryside? I'd rather live in the city. Would you rather have a banana or an apple? I'd rather have an apple. Now I'm in Gare du Nord, and there I'd rather like a cup of coffee. Now be careful, because that's a different use of the word rather. It's not talking about preference, but we'll come to that in a minute. So I'm heading off for a coffee. So I'm in Gare du Nord, just about to catch my train. Time for a quick cup of coffee. Now you want to know if you can use prefer rather than would rather. Okay, and the quick answer to that is yes, you can. You can use prefer with an infinitive. Okay, I would prefer to take the train than the plane. Okay, And if you speak a Latin-based language, then you already have prefer in your vocabulary, so it's quite natural to use prefer. However, there are 2 points to bear in mind. Firstly, before a verb, native English speakers would probably use would rather. I'm not saying prefer is incorrect, but they'd probably use would rather. So do learn it, and you need to understand it too. So I would rather watch football than cricket. I would rather live in London than Paris. That's not necessarily true, because I love both cities. It's just an example. Okay. And the other thing to bear in mind is when you have to use prefer, and that is before a noun. Before a noun, you cannot use would rather because you need a verb. I would rather, I prefer coffee to tea. I prefer coffee to tea. Okay, you cannot say that with would rather because you need to have a verb. So you would have to say, I would rather have coffee. Okay, I would rather watch a game of football. I prefer football to cricket. Okay, so with prefer, you can use it just with a noun. Now we're going to look at would rather in the negative, but I've got to go and catch my train. About to enter the Eurostar now. Okay, so for the negative, use would rather not. Just put not before the verb. I would rather not jump in that lake full of crocodiles. I would rather not go into that horrible restaurant. I would rather not go to work today. So up until now we've been using would rather plus a verb in the infinitive without to, and that's okay most of the time when it's clear by the context who you are speaking to. However, sometimes we need to put a pronoun after rather and before the verb, okay, if we need to be very clear about who we're talking to. And that's when you would use the unreal past. So use a past tense there. You use a past tense. I'll show you what I mean, okay? So, for example, shall we stay at the party? No, I'd rather we went. I'd rather we went home now, okay? Shall we speak French? No, I'd rather we spoke in English, or I'd rather we didn't. Okay, I'd rather we didn't. So this is not, as it's not past, this is called an unreal past. Okay. Let me give you one more example. Okay, so shall we have a meeting today? No, I'd rather we had the meeting next week. Strange, isn't it? Because you're using a past tense to talk about the future. Okay, but as I said, it's called an unreal past in English. And I'll give you just one more example. Should he come today? No, I'd rather he came tomorrow. I'd rather he came tomorrow. Got that? in London. I made it. And I've just got time to tell you about the other use of rather, and that is to talk about something to a certain degree, to a certain amount. Okay, remember this is a completely different use of rather. So I'll give you an example. I rather enjoyed the journey today. I rather enjoyed the journey today. That's before a verb. The exam was rather difficult. The exam was rather difficult. Or an adjective. And also the film was rather good. The film was rather good. So you could use a synonym quite good or pretty good. And also even as a noun. This guy's rather stupid. And one more thing before I finish. You can use rather to correct a mistake you've made in the middle of a sentence. Let me give you an example of that. So today is Tuesday, or rather Wednesday. Okay, so you can use or rather, just like I mean. You could also use I mean. So today's Tuesday, or rather Wednesday. You can do that when you made a mistake, or even intentionally, just to add some, be playful with the language. So, for example, he sang, or rather shouted, through the song. Okay, so there you are. I'm in London now. I'm off to, I don't know, do something. See you later.